Oh, it's always a surprise when it comes up live because I'm always unprepared, and I'm even less prepared tonight than normal. Uh, Dutch is not feeling well. Our partner, Shane, he's unable to make it tonight. I'm a little behind schedule, well after 10 o'clock, as you may have guessed. And it's Friday night. It's February 6th, and 2015. And great start to the morning. Sarcastically, he said, uh, got up. I have a early morning doctor's appointment every Friday. Uh, get to my appointment, and I got there early this morning. I was like, well, I had a little bit of spare time. I wanted to get there and relax. So the appointment was at 9:15, and I got there for 8 o'clock. So I brought some music. I was going to kick back and relax, and have some breakfast nearby, and make a morning of it. But I got there to check in, and they're like, "Oh, tried calling you, Wayne. The person's out sick. Appointment's canceled today." I'm like, oh. So you look for the bright side. I was trying to make a morning of it, so I went ahead and made a morning of it anyway. Embrace the experience. That was even a message I sent to somebody while I was sitting there. So, got to embrace the experience. I mean, I went with the intention of making a morning of it, and so I made a morning of it even without the appointment. It's just it's a frame of was I disappointed? Sure, but think it is what it is. They say the universe always is speaking to me. I have to make sure that I'm listening. And when I say the universe is always speaking, it's always telling the truth. That means events are what they are, and I can put my own spin on them. And if I want to take an experience and make a negative experience out of it, that's on me. Without any effort, I think experiences are just neutral. They're just experiences. And if I start pushing them positive or negative, that's on me either way. So if I can push them positive, I'd rather do that than push them negative. Or I can just be completely detached and make it a neutral experience. And that's not the worst thing. That's the crisis to challenge to opportunity. If you're feeling like you're in a crisis situation, that's a very negative experience. That's not the universe doing that. That's you doing that. The universe is challenging you, perhaps, or it's a challenge for you, because the universe is not really doing anything to you. The universe is just doing what it does. Again, it's very neutral. And this is all my opinion, of course. I'm not telling whatever you believe that gets you through the day is the right thing for you, as long as it's getting you through the day. But I have to. For me, I think of it as being neutral, and the advantage of it being neutral is that I can shift it from positive to negative. If I'm feeling negative, I can try and turn that around and say, you know what, that negativity, that's on me. But if the negativity is on me, then the positivity can be on me too, and I have to take a little bit of control that way, and I can try to make it a positive experience. So I made it a positive experience. I chatted with the people at the office, the staff, and the other people in the waiting area. I said, and I made an experience out of it. I embraced the experience. So that was my day. That was at least the start of my day, and then from there it went really well. I can't complain. We have the Random Thoughts with Random Access Facebook page. We like to post a couple articles each day on there. They're mostly just they're mostly articles. Very rarely do I actually just post little random thoughts. I have random thoughts about the articles I post. The random thoughts, if I get them, I'll post them directly to Twitter rather than on the Facebook page. But from the Twitter, you can see everything, Facebook and Twitter. From the Facebook, you just see the Facebook stuff. The articles are there. You can visit it. You can like the page. It should appear in your timeline. If not, hey, visit the page. Random Thoughts with Random Access. We have 27 likes. Hopefully, people are liking on a regular basis the stuff that gets posted there. I have no control over that. I mean, I can only performance feedback revision. I need the feedback in order to change what I do. In the meantime, I'm really just happily toasting along, and I'm enjoying it. And I try to post things that get me thinking, either good thoughts or bad thoughts, or they get an emotional reaction out of me, or get a chain of thoughts out of chain reaction of thoughts out of me. If I can, I like to post that kind of stuff, and then I like to try and use this opportunity tonight at night to kind of talk about what I'm thinking about there, and one, it helps me sort it out. Maybe it gives you a chance to do the same sort of things with the things in your life, articles that you see or things that get a reaction of you. You can play that little game too. You can say, hey, what's going on here? What am I thinking about? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? What's the underlying issue here? Or, with me, I mean, so let's. What was the first thing here? I got going here. This is this is one that kind of inspired the title of tonight's episode. I was calling this random thoughts, specific words. I think we use words, and this is this thing I like to talk about. This is a language handshake where we have thoughts. I have a thought in my head, and I want to communicate over to you that thought. Either I want to trigger a thought in your head, or I want to actually duplicate the thought in my head into your head. But I use language to do that. And language has to be carefully chosen. I mean, the point of a language handshake is there's two parts. One is we have to agree on the language. What words do we use? Are we speaking French? Are we speaking English? This is the list of words we will be using to communicate our thoughts. That's the first part. But the second part is also the meanings of those words or phrases or expressions. A lot of times people say one thing to somebody else, but the people have two different thoughts of what those words even meant. I mean, they agree on all the words, but they don't agree on the meanings of the words. So part of the language handshake is using words. Words have meaning, so it's agreeing on the specific meanings of those words. This is one thing I really like about mathematics is very careful about creating a rigid language. Mathematics I like to think of as very creative. It's very artistic. It's very fluid. But the language of mathematics is very rigid. The math is not rigid, I don't think. The mathematics is just the mathematics, and it's beautiful. It's like the universe speaking. It's not rigid. It just is what it is. I mean, there's a certain rigidity, I guess, but it could be anything. Well, math, it could be anything. The universe is going to be what the universe is going to be. But the math could be almost anything. But the language of the math, the way we communicate the math, that's going to be very rigid. And that way we can communicate exactly. We duplicate thoughts in mathematics. I have a mathematical thought in my head, and I want to duplicate that mathematical thought in your head, and I need the language of mathematics to do it. So we're very careful about definitions. When I use this word, I mean this. And then there's standard accepted definitions that almost never change. But one thing you can do in math is you can change up the definitions for the purposes of a specific conversation. To get engaged in a conversation with a mathematician, a lot of times you have to be flexible like this. They're going to try and communicate a thought. They're going to use some suggestive notation, some suggestive language, but they'll clarify in advance what they mean when they use it for the purposes of that conversation. It's just a way of, we establish the ground rules. And, of course, there's just the traditional ground rules that we all accept. But if you're going to deviate from those, you specify them, and you say, and then everybody, for the purposes of that conversation, accepts it. Because it's about communicating the thoughts. It's not about getting tied up in the words. Oh, I don't like the way you use that word. It doesn't matter if you like the way I use that word or not. When I use this word, I'm meaning this. So let's just go from there. Let's not argue over the words when it's the thoughts that are important. Well, in everyday language or communicating everyday news, here's one that comes up: is this genetically modified? And GMO, people are really against GMOs, genetically modified organisms. But genetically modified food, GM foods, and people want their genetically modified food labeled. And part of this is, in your head, what do you think of when you think of genetically modified food, or genetically modified? Different people think different things. There are people who think of the evil scientist in the lab coat splicing genes from one animal or plant to another animal or plant, or just cooking up genes from scratch and then embedding them into some organism, and I'm getting all kinds of weird highly technical, genetically engineered results. That's what some people think of when they think of genetically modified foods. But But then there are other people, and it seems to be a lot of the more scientific-minded people, when they hear genetically modified, they just mean that the genes have been manipulated in some way. Um, and in a lot of ways, it's through natural selection. And here's this article here from where it's from, but you can see it on my webpage. But you can just look this stuff up. This is a random web page talking about this, but there's a picture here, and it's showing what watermelon and corn and bananas and eggplants, and then there's a couple more below the fold. What they look like, there's cabbage, actually cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, are all the same thing, believe it or not. And some other things like that, but without genetic modification. And in this case, the genetic modification was just, selection by human selection, to just breed. Just breeding and keeping the ones that you like. It wasn't done in a lab; it was just done by humans, modifying this stuff. And the foods today, watermelon, corn, eggplants, bananas, don't look anything like their sort of natural, unmodified one. But when people say genetically modified, we tend to we think two different things. There's two different camps. There's probably a whole spectrum of camps, believe it or not. But there's this one spectrum of camp that thinks of adding chemicals. That's another thing. Everything's chemicals. Okay. But there's people who imagine this, this unnatural lab experiment, and there's other people who imagine more genetically modified, and just in the sense of just manipulating genes, just by artificial selection. So that's the thing about language. So a lot of times you hear people arguing about whether genetically modified food should be labeled, and they haven't quite nailed down what they mean by genetically modified. What are you including when you say that? Another example I saw recently related to this was they did a survey. Somebody, I say they, some random person did a survey, Pew Research maybe, but 80% of people thought that food containing DNA should be labeled as containing DNA. And then anybody who's a little bit scientifically minded or scientifically literate, I guess would be more accurate to say, would say, whoa. I mean, if it's plant or animal, doesn't it contain DNA? I mean, DNA is just the stuff of life. So if you're eating something that was alive, it's probably got DNA in it. So why do we need to label something with DNA? And again, it's people hear these words, they think different thoughts, and so they're having a conversation or a discussion or an argument, and they're not even agreeing on the ground rules. They're not agreeing on the same words. Here's where this gets really dangerous: is when this stuff rises to the level of policy and laws get written. Lawyers come in, and lawyers are actually very careful about this. Lawyers define the words they use. Generally, I mean, I guess maybe there might be a few examples of where they weren't careful and this didn't happen, but you could have people saying, "Oh, I want food with DNA to get labeled," and then the lawyers get hold of it, and then when the lawyers are done and the law gets written, you think the law says one thing, and it actually is something completely different, because the words didn't mean what you thought they meant, or they didn't end up meaning what you thought they meant, or what you think they should mean. And so we really can't come to a consensus as a population, as people in a democracy, unless we agree on what words mean. And we don't spend enough time figuring out what words mean. I mean, I just see enough people debating. I call it debating. It's not even debating; they're just arguing. But they end up arguing over words, and they're not arguing over thoughts or ideas, or they're arguing over words. And to me, it's I'd rather not argue about words. I mean, words they're just words. We can define them any way we want. Let's agree on the definitions of the words, but let's not argue because we have a misunderstanding about the words. So when you hear genetically modified, what do you think? Do you like genetically modified bananas? Those are the bananas that you're eating every day. Or do you think of genetically modified as something else? So just sort of keep that out there in mind. That really was kind of on my mind. But I saw this other great story here. This is kind of just a rant, shift gears, and hopefully nobody got whiplash on this move here. But these what the well, near Earth asteroids, but the ones that are exciting now are these accessible near Earth asteroids. So accessible meaning that we can actually reasonably it's reasonably easy to get there to them. But the number of these things is growing and growing and growing and growing. Hundreds of them, thousands of them now. There was it's like 12,000 of these near Earth asteroids, but literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them are these ones that are really accessible. How accessible are they? They're actually more accessible than going to the moon. To go to the moon and just go low orbit around the moon and then to come back to Earth takes more energy than it does to go visit some of these asteroids and then come back to the Earth. So that just opens up the possibility for mining. Granted, it's still very expensive. I mean, I'm not going to say it's cheap. I mean, very expensive to go to the moon. It's very expensive to go to these asteroids, especially if you're planning a return trips. Well, one reason they're expensive is because of gravity. It makes things very expensive. The good news is that these little asteroids don't have a lot of gravity, so coming back from them is not as difficult as you might think. Returning from Mars is very, 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 very difficult because whatever fuel you need to return from Mars, you got to take with you to Mars at this point. Although we have found water on Mars, and so there's a possibility we can make rocket fuel on Mars, which would really make things a lot better. But same thing with the moon. You go in a low Earth orbit around the moon. The moon's got gravity. It's not that much. I mean, it's 1/6 the Earth's gravity, but it's still a substantial amount of gravity. It's a fair amount. Any fuel that you need to get away from there, you got to send with you there. And it's the same with these asteroids, but they need so little to come back. You just kind of point at the Earth and go, and then you get sucked into the Earth. So it's a little bit easier coming back. So some of these things, it's very exciting. There's literally hundreds of these near Earth asteroids that are accessible, that we can get to and return from cheaper than we can even just orbit the moon. Forget landing on the moon. I mean, obviously landing on the moon is even more, but there's hundreds of them that we can get to that are. So that open up the whole mining possibility. And in fact, on this picture here, you can see there's the little guys mining the asteroid. And there's lots of ways that mine these asteroids. The one that I like is using these Lagrange points. There's about 5 of them, but there's like 2 that are really good. These are little points in the Earth's orbit, 60 degrees ahead in our orbit and 60 degrees behind in our orbit. And every planet that orbits the sun has these little stable points. They're like these like sinkholes for gravity. It's like the gravity there kind of balanced out between the Earth and the sun, and things just kind of sit there. So you can we can drag these little asteroids over, and then we can park them there. And then we know exactly where they are. They're right there. We can build a station out there that sits in that area that's close to the asteroids. We can mine the asteroids at our leisure. We can set up systems for getting stuff back to the Earth. So you can, so mining these asteroids becomes really, really good. It's a lot better than, I think, you don't want to bring the asteroids back to the Earth. What do you do with it? It's not, you don't want it orbiting the Earth, I don't think. That's more junk orbiting the Earth, right? You don't want to crash into the Earth. So you tow it out to these Lagrange points, these little stable, these stable points, and then these two ones right before us and right after us are very, very they're very stable. Let's I'll call it what it is. They're very stable, and we can put the asteroids there, and they'll just stay there. They move around a little bit, maybe, but we'll always know where they are. And then we can mine them. So this asteroid stuff is really, really exciting to me. The future could be a lot different than we think it is now. What gets really exciting is if we can find this stuff on these asteroids to manufacture rocket fuel, because then all we have to do is get our rockets to the Lagrange point, and then from there we can fuel them up. We can send them where we need to go, and hopefully we can send them to a place where there's fuel so that we can send the stuff back. You start doing this, it starts becoming very exciting. You don't have to, I don't know, you just think about yourself. It's if there's gas stations out there in the universe for us to use, then who knows where the limit is. So, okay, hate to keep mentioning this one, but this is it's kind of awkward right in the middle of the screen there. This is not, but this is this. We're making politics out of science. Science is not supposed to be political. Science is supposed to be science. Stop making it political. Um, but here, it's a tweet from Hillary Clinton, and the thing is here is it. Is she the one who's making this political? I don't think that supporting science makes it political. I think the way you politicize science is you go against science because you act like science is not true, and that's what kind of her tweet is here. This is really good. I don't know if you could read this, but I'll read it to you. It says, "The science is clear. The Earth is round. The sky is blue, and vaccines work. Let's protect all our kids." And then she has a little hashtag grandmother knows best. Because there's this movement out there, people not vaccinating their kids for pretty common vaccines, measles, and they're really worried about. I get it, people are worried. Okay, people worry about things, but they're worried about vaccines causing autism. Okay, there was one study, one time, I think there's one major study that back in the 80s showed a link between vaccinations and autism by this guy. I think it was Whitaker or something like that. And I should, we'll just call him Whitaker. But it was a fabricated study. He falsified all his data. The study was retracted. He lost his license. He was disbarred. Where they go? He had his medical license pulled. He was shamed. He was driven from the community it was a huge scandal. But the people don't remember that part. They remember the part that there's these studies about autism and vaccines. And it's like, okay, there was one study that showed a connection, and that's the whole the falsified study, the hoax study, the scam, whatever it is. And two, every other study has shown either no connection, or, believe it or not, there are studies that show that vaccinating your kids might help, keep autism rates low. I don't know if I buy that. It seems a little suspicious, but that's just a trick of the stats. I mean, it's not a big effect. A lot of times there's just an effect, and it just hits that threshold of what we consider, statistically significant, and it can be the result of a lot of different things. But the point being, there are no studies that show a link. There are no links. Your kids are not going to get autism from vaccines, as far as we know. I mean, granted, anything's possible. Okay, anything's possible, but you can't be going by anything's possible. Drinking water might give your kids autism. Are you gonna stop feeding your kids water? So get your unless you have another reason to be against vaccines, don't use the autism one. That's for sure. People have other reasons, and then we can probably shoot those reasons down one by one by one. The main reason is you're living in a society, as George might say from Seinfeld. You're living in a society. You have a responsibility to vaccinate your kids. And if we do this right, we could eventually stop vaccinating the kids for things like measles, because we could wipe measles out. We got rid of smallpox. We made a worldwide effort, and we got rid of smallpox. For the most part, in the U.S., we don't worry about polio vaccines anymore. Polio still exists in the human population. It's not as bad as it used to be, and it's not a problem in the U.S. And it's such a small problem in the U.S. that we don't even have to vaccinate for it. That any risk associated with vaccinating, as small as the risk is from vaccinating for polio, that tiny infinitesimal little risk is actually even too big to consider, because of you don't have polio in the U.S. and we don't even do polio vaccines. So we could drive measles down to that point, except for measles is too prevalent out in the rest of the world outside the U.S. and we have people traveling back and forth. So measles appears in the U.S. sporadically, and we get little, I wouldn't call it an outbreak, but you get somebody coming in and bringing measles with them. And then and now we're actually to the point where we have populations of measles surviving in the U.S. because of people not vaccinating their kids anymore. Vaccinate your kids, please. Vaccinate your kids. And it's not just your kids, but there's other kids out there who are allergic who can't be vaccinated. infants can't be vaccinated until after about 6 months or so. These people, these small children, and the sick and the infirm and the elderly in some cases, they depend on you to do your part. Because again, we're living in a society. Yeah, that's me ranting and raving. I could probably rant more than that, but it's a tired subject with me. It's getting to be a tired subject, and so I need to find something to move on and talk about. And I would like to talk about something else, but tonight's not going to be the night. The main thing is I like this language handshake. I like to think about this. I can think about when I'm having conversations with people, even if we are using words on that we both agree that we're using the same words. Do we agree on the meanings of those words? Because I think I find out there's a lot of issues with conversations with people is that we don't agree on the meanings of the words. And sometimes that's hard to hammer out because sometimes people get really defensive too. They don't want to change the meaning of their word. It's like, I'm not asking you to change the meaning. I'm just saying for the purpose of this conversation, we'll change the meaning. We're going to agree on a meaning for this conversation. Next conversation, we'll have a different meaning. But some people they don't even want to do that. Like, no. Because getting people to change their mind about anything is. Mark Twain says that it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. And it's this thing about how we like to hold on to our own perceptions, and our perceptions, our perspective comforts us. It's the way we filter reality, and so it's our connection to reality. So it's very important to us that we are comfortable with it, and so as Mark Twain says, it's easier to fool somebody than to convince them they've been fooled. To tell them they're wrong, they want to hear it. And related to that is people aren't even willing to let go of it just for the sake of having it's a thought experiment or just a theoretical conversation or just All right, Twitter update. This is a scary number here. It's been going down. It was up to 560 was our highest Twitter followers, 960, and then it was down to 950. So it was down, and now we're at it's holding at 950. There we go. So that's a good sign. So you can give us a call at the feedback line 15189-666-175. That's 15189-666-1715. That's 3 to 4 every day, or 3 to 5 on the weekends, and 11 to midnight after the show every night. Give us a call. It's good in the U.S. and Canada. 15189-666-1715. And or hit us up on the Twitter. Use the RTWRE. That's Random Thoughts with Random Access hashtag. We'll be sure to see it. Or you can tweet directly at us at Random Access. Catch us on Facebook. Catch us on Twitter. Catch us on Google Plus. Catch us on YouTube. Leave YouTube comments. We're ubiquitous. So courage. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll work on maybe getting maybe this Sunday especially a little more of a kind of a thought, dig in some thoughts and really get some random thoughts going. But with that, thanks for joining us, and good night. Now how do I stop this?